Howdy folks, Doc here with Last Best Tool, and I had brought up these Klein kind of bent handle screwdrivers in a previous video, and I thought I'd do a little bit more with them. I absolutely love these things, although they are old school. And old school means that there's no real technology here except some sort of a crank handle. But that handle actually has some merit to study. And I'm going to go over that here real quick. First of all, as far as I can tell, that the Klein company makes a couple versions of this, but not many. This is a slotted screwdriver, a Phillips, number 2 Phillips. You can see that they have the model number 670, 682 for the Phillips here. This particular one I really like. This is a interchangeable bit version. It uses a proprietary bit. There is no magnet here. It uses kind of an indent with a ball bearing. That's unfortunate. I wish I could put any bit in here, and I may modify this so I can. But what I'd like to get into is the concept of how these things work so well. And the first thing to point out is this particular angle right here of the shaft is unique. If I put it on a, here's a Klein level, and it's got magnetic insets in the base. So if I snap that down and line it up, what you're going to see, let me line it up on this end, is you see that it is not a straight fit. So as I rotate this thing around, it's going to collide, but at an angle. You see that angle? Here is one that, as far as I can tell, is a Klein knockoff. If I slide it back and you look at the angle of this thing, it remains the same. You see that? Versus, let me grab the version of the Klein here. See this one? This tapers up towards the center of your palm. You see that? It's a subtle but very important difference. This one is a crank. See that? This remains parallel, just like this. See that? That's not good. What you want is the Klein angle, which, if you look at this, tilts. Let me grab it up here. See that? It's a different tilt. This remains in a very small circle. And here's why. If I grab this thing right here and spin it, you see there's a difference between the radius or the diameter of the spin here versus here. So if I stick a screw on this, like this guy right here, and then start spinning, I can keep this aligned. That's a big deal. Whereas if I grab what turns out, I think, to be a Klein knockoff that I have to actually go into a rigid wrist position and move it into my elbow and even my shoulder in order to crank this straight. Whereas these others, like the Kleins, you know, I've got several Kleins, I can actually hold this almost in a constant position in my wrist and then make this motion here, and it zings this in just beautifully. So there is a lot of technology, even though these are old school, in this bend here, this shape, versus what I believe is a Klein knockoff that I had floating around in my tool chest. I cannot see a single indication of any maker's mark here except this, where it says, I can read that chrome vanadium. That is often, when you see that on a screwdriver shaft, an indication of a fraud, a knockoff, a forgery. And when I looked at it at this angle here compared to this angle here, I could tell there was a difference. You can see that. In fact, if I put these base to base, you can really see it. You can see how those are different. This one bends in. The Klein is much more efficient at keeping this straight. If I try that here and just rotate, you can see it wobbles all over the place. What I have to do is move my entire arm, which moves it away from this joint and moves it to two other joints and makes it more of a well crank. And then, of course, one of my favorites that I wish they would involve a kind of an interchangeable bit tip. I mean, this is just super slick. Look at that. I'm sitting there spinning this just like my Milwaukee drill, and it is moving this in. Now, normally you don't use grabber screws with these. They're more electronics, outlets, you know, junction boxes, etc., where you're using this kind of a motion and tool. It's hard to grab this and get it snug. Usually you need an extra screwdriver, but I love these things. Well worth it. Well worth exploring. This one's a little harder to keep center, takes some practice, but once you've got it, you can drive a nice straight slotted screw right in. But this one right here, whoops, not the fake one, sorry. This one right here, go get it. This is the Klein Tools 682 number 2 Phillips with the rapid drive. Definitely a tool you should have. And with that, Doc out.